Bonjour, this is Emma at Words and Peace and Friends Book Tours. If you've been to my blog recently, you may have seen that I'm currently in some type of Michel Bussi binge. Michel Bussi is a French author. He writes thrillers, and for several years he's been in the top 3 most sold authors in France. So I thought I would talk to you about the last 5 books I read by him, and it's not going to be in chronological order, but in the order in which I read them. I'm doing this because it seems that English-speaking bloggers don't know him. I rarely see anything about his books on English blogs or American blogs, even though he's an amazing author and most of his books are available in English translation. And they're good. I have recommended it to some of members of my book club if they've read it in English, and they really liked it a lot. So I really thought I need to speak to you about him. An important biographical detail about Bussi, I think, is that he is actually a history and a geography teacher, and you'll see how important it is in his books, and I'll come back to that when I talk specifically about some of his books. So let's start, and the very first book I read by him was After the Crash. Oh, I should actually say, I'm not reading his books, I'm listening to them. I'm using a subscription to eStories, which is equivalent to Audible, but cheaper. And this is the only way I can get to listen to French audiobooks, because unfortunately my public library doesn't carry French audiobooks. The first book by Michel Bussi I listened to was After the Crash. And by the way, I'm just going to go directly into English titles because most of you are English speaking. If you do want the French equivalent, please leave a comment and I'll do that for you. The French title for After the Crash is really cool because there's a play on words in it, and obviously it's impossible to translate in English, so I'll just explain that quickly to you. It's called Un avion sans aile, and when you say sans aile, oh, so un avion is a plane, sans means without, and it's spelled S-A-N-S, so because it ends with a consonant, you can kind of glue to the next word that will start with a vowel, so that's why it sounds sans aile. And L, when you hear L, it can mean 2 things. Now you're talking about a plane, so it can be une aile, A-I-L-E, is actually a wing plane, a plane wing, the wing of a plane. But sans elle, E-L-L-E, can also mean without her. So E-L-L-E or A-I-L-E are written, are pronounced exactly the same way in French. So you got this play on words, and the reason why it's so smart is that there was a plane crash in the mountains between France and Switzerland in the Alps, and there's only one survivor, and this survivor is a 3-month-old baby. Now the problem is, on that plane, we know there were 2 families with 2 babies, and as it's a girl, she's the only survivor, we don't know which family it is. Now these 2 families, one was rich and one was very poor, and one of the families hired an investigator to try to identify this baby. Early at the beginning of the book, this investigator, 18 years later into his investigation, he seems he hasn't figured it out yet, so he's ready to commit suicide. But before that, he wants to give his diary, which is kind of his journal of the investigation with all the details, to the survivor girl. Obviously, she's a young woman now, so so that's about it. I'm not going to tell you more, but there's so much suspense about who's who, about the 2 families, about the investigator. It's so well done, and it's one twist after another, and you don't expect them, and there's the ending is just, oh wow. Now I was talking about geography. Yeah, all the description about the snow, the cold in that area are excellent as well. The next book I listened to by Michel Bussi is Blackwater Lilies. Now the setting is totally different. We are in Giverny, and you may have visited this place, not too far from Paris. It's Claude Monet, the painting Claude Monet's place. You know, with the famous lake with all the lilies. I mean, the famous pond, I should probably say, with all the lilies. So this is, that's the title, Black Water Lilies. What's really neat about this book is actually even how it begins. And I'm going to read a few passages of the very beginning. It sounds like a tale, almost like a fairy tale or something like that. 3 women lived in a village. The first was mean, the second a liar, and the third an egotist. Okay, sorry. I'm skipping a bit, but they were not the same age, not at all. The first was over 80 and a widow, almost. The second was 36 and had never deceived her husband yet. The third was nearly 11 and all the boys in her school wanted her to be their girlfriend. The first dressed always in black. The second put on makeup for her lover. The third plaited her hair so that her tresses flew out behind her in the wind. All 3 were quite different, but they had something in common, a secret. All 3 dreamed of leaving. Yes, of leaving Giverny, the famous village that compels swarms of people to travel across the entire world just to stroll in its gardens for a few hours, because of the Impressionists. The first woman, the oldest, owned a pretty painting. The second was interested in artists. The third, the youngest, was good at painting. Very good, in fact. And the very end of the opening of the book is the sentence. The third, the youngest, was called Fanette Morel. The second was called Stéphanie Dupin. The first, the oldest, that was me. So the narrator is the oldest woman of the 3. This opening is fantastic, especially, you know, as the story develops, and when you finish the book, when you realize what's happening, what happened, and then you read again the opening, it's just like, oh wow, how did he think about that? Now, in the excerpt I just read, they mentioned a secret. So what's the secret these 3 women are sharing? Very early on in the book, a man of the village is murdered. So has the secret something to do with this murder? I'm not going to tell you. But again, it's such an unbelievable plot, and the suspense is just incredible. I mean, if you really are into suspense and you've never read any French author, my God, you have to choose Michel Bussi. The third book is called Time is a Killer. Now the setting is in Corsica. Corsica is a French island in the Mediterranean Sea. It's actually part of French territory. And actually it seems like Bussi likes islands. And so there's a lot of fantastic details about geography, the flora of the island, and the culture. Corsican culture is very specific, very developed, and it comes out wonderfully in the book. At the beginning of the book, we know that Clotilde, a young girl, a teenager, was in a car accident, and she survived, but both her parents and her brother were killed. Now, decades later, she goes back to the site of the accident, and now she's married, and she has herself a young daughter. And but then she receives a letter that's signed by her mother, and that seems to reveal details that only her mother would know. So, but her mother died in the accident, so what's going on? So the whole story, the whole suspense is what really happened, why this accident, how it happened, and how it's all connected to, yes, to Corsican culture. It's very, very well done again. What I also liked in this book is the alternation between third-person narrative and first-person narrative. And a first-person narrative are excerpts of Clotilde's diary, because when she was this teenager, that summer when the accident happened, she was keeping a diary, and it really gave a lot of really good dimension to the book. The fourth book is called On la trouvait plutôt jolie. Now I'm saying the title in French because so far it doesn't seem to have been translated in English, though it's been translated in several other languages. So literally, I would say, like, they thought she was rather pretty. I've written a short review on this, and I explained that the title is actually coming from a song by Pierre Perret, who is kind of a comic singer in France, but also touching very hot topics. And this one is about immigration. And so the book is about immigration. And the main character is Lily, and that's the name of the woman in the song by Pierre Perret as well. So that's where Bussi found kind of his inspiration for this. And it's a very moving thriller. It's a thriller, but very, very moving about the whole fate of immigrants. Now, you know, in the US, especially these days with the caravan, we hear a lot about Mexicans or South American people who try to come in the US. In France, we have a major problem with all the people who are trying to come from Africa, so they have to cross the Mediterranean Sea. And as you can imagine, some people are really doing business with this and having them pay a lot of money to get on the boat, and then they pack too many people on the boat to cross the sea, and many drown every year. Okay, so that's the background, and I'm not going to tell you more about it, but wow, it was very, very powerful. It's really cool to use, I think, the genre of thriller to really touch to some very important contemporary issues. I think it's a very smart way to do it, because some people, you know, some don't like nonfiction, so they are not going to read about this, but they like thrillers, so they are going to read this book and they're going to learn a lot about it, and it's going to raise their awareness about the problem. So fantastic. Now, the last book I listened by Michel Bussi is called Don't Let Go. Now, it's also set on an island, this time the island of La Réunion, which is also French territory, and it's located southeast of Africa. So southeast of Africa, you first have a fairly large island called Madagascar, and on the east of that you've got a smaller one, I mean several smaller ones, but one of them is called La Réunion. There's a couple on vacation at a ski resort on this island, and they are there with their 6-year-old daughter. And one day they are around the swimming pool, and at one point the wife says, "Oh, I need to go back to my room to get something." But an hour later she's still not back, so the husband goes to the room, and the wife is not in the room. And there was a cleaning lady in the hallway, and she swears that she's never seen the woman leave the room. So where is that woman? What happened? And some witnesses say that they saw the husband actually leave with a big cart with something big in it. So, and then he disappears with the daughter. So it's just like, what's happening? So you've got this major hunt trying to find this guy. And again, the twists and turns are unbelievable. It's never what you think, you know. And I really also enjoy very much his description of the island. There's a lot of there are a lot of volcanoes, and very, very interesting flora and fauna. So especially at one point they visit a park. It's fascinating. And the way he does it, you know, it doesn't feel like, oh, okay, now I'm a, you know, geography teacher, I'm going to teach you about the island. No, definitely not. It's so well integrated into the plot. It's excellent. So that's it for today, and I wish you a very happy reading week. And if you know and enjoy some other international thrillers, please leave the title for me in a comment under the video. And au revoir!